Welcome, everyone. It's been a while. This is Origin Story Podcast. I am back to do this interview show that I love to do so much. And today I have my guest, Tessa Smith from Mamas Geeky. Tessa, welcome. Thank you. And how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun. I love chatting with you. So,
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on. And I think, and you and I have been actively engaging on Twitter these past few hours right before the show because WandaVision just came out. So we're geeking out about that right now. We geek out about a whole lot of stuff. And I think the best way to geek out right now would be to start with the number one question because every origin story has one. And I would like to ask, because you're into movies and you're into comics, we'll get into all of that. But who was your mentor? Who would you say is the person that got you into movies in the first place?
well, I always watched movies when I was younger, like with my dad, and probably movies I shouldn't have watched, like at different ages. Like I was probably, I want to say I was 8 or 9, and we watched The Nightmare on Elm Streets, and
Oh,
yeah, and then my dad thought it would be really funny that while I was sleeping to take a rake and scratch it down the window while I was asleep. And it was terrifying. And I think that's where my love of like horror and being scared comes from, which is super weird to say because I mean I was so scared. Like I ran out of the room and I hid in the bathroom and but I think that's where my love of that comes from. And I think movies in general, I watched them a lot with my dad, and like even after my parents got divorced, whenever I would go visit him, we would watch movies. So I think that's kind of where it started. And
mhm.
then I don't know, just continued.
Yeah. So it came from dear old dad, and there, I think there's always two movies for us big movie fans, and I think that's the first movie you remember watching, and the first movie you remember watching and realizing you're in love with this weird thing that is movies. What would you say is the first movie you remember watching at all?
First movie I remember watching is it's got to be Cinderella, I think, which is so silly and so lame. But like, I'm a little girl. I was a little girl, and I remember watching it with my sister. And I remember my sister did not like it, and I was like instantly hooked with Disney. And my sister was like, "This is boring." I just it's like a vague memories, but I remember watching it. And my sister like walking away, and me just sitting there finishing the movie without her even finishing watching it.
Oh, oh wow! And what would you say was the first movie where you had that click inside? You had that heart skipping a beat, falling in love with movies.
It's got to be that Nightmare on Elm Street situation, that whole situation, because I that's when I was like, I kind of love being terrified, which is like, but I love movies in general. And then I always started with the horror genre, and then I branched out. But I don't know what it is. I'm weird. I like to be scared.
No, it makes sense because movies, it's an experience. So whatever they're out to get out of you, if they get that, I think it's a win. It's a win for them. So the fact that you got scared for Nightmare, it's proof that it did its job right.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask because you're in movies, but you're particularly into the sphere that I am as well of being a geek. And was that a love that was always there? When did that emerge? Because I know you're also into comics a lot, and I want to get into that.
So so this is totally going to sound like the same exact answer as before. My dad had a lot of comic books, and he shared them with me when I was younger, and I probably started reading them when I was like 8 or 9, and they were, I think it was Sergeant Rock is what it was called,
Mm.
and it was like a war, which is probably partly why I like war movies a lot too and war stuff. But that's what I started with, and I was reading those, and then I realized like, oh, there's this Marvel and DC comic book universe that's a lot better than this Sergeant Rock comic book. And so I branched out from reading this box of comics that my dad had to just everything. And I ended up really going with Marvel, a little bit of DC, but a lot of Marvel.
Okay, so we're the same. I gotta say right now we're on the same boat. But that's an awesome that you got so far. I gotta say we've established that is was awesome and is hopefully still. Um, and was there a movie, not necessarily that first one you watched, that first one you fell in love with, but what is your most cherished one of the first theater experiences you remember having?
Um, well, theater. So this is probably my favorite theater one. Wasn't my first, but this is again. It's like I'm such a nerd, but it was seeing Iron Man in theaters because I knew, being a comic book fan, this is make or break. I mean, yes, they'll probably continue with another one or two, but this is make or break. And I sat in the theater and before it started, I like cried a little. I was like, okay, if everybody hates this movie, what has my life been? Where I have been so in love with comic books, and I'm so excited to see these people, these characters, come to the big screen. And I just loved that movie. I think it was a perfect introduction to the MCU, and that is one of my most cherished theater experiences because I remember thinking this could be huge, and I would never have imagined it's grown into what the MCU has grown into now, which is incredible for Marvel fans.
No, for sure. I'm with you. Even if I was asked that question, that's a great one, but it's not even one I would think of. So kudos for that. And being a comic book fan at that time, movies up until then, and sometimes they still are, but we're very 50-50. Sometimes, oh, there's a really good one, but then there's another bad one. How was it to grow up and then be in that early 2000s to late 2000s era where comic book movies were always, "Is this gonna work? Is this not gonna work?"
Oh, it killed me because I always it got to the point where I was nervous to like get my friends excited about it, the ones who didn't read comics, because I felt like so many times I'd been like, "Oh, like Fantastic Four, this is going to be so good."
Yeah,
And then it's not, which oh man, I can't wait for Kevin to give us a Fantastic Four movie that's good because I feel like we still haven't had one. But
yeah,
it was hard, because I'm like and that's I think why it feels so I want to be validated as like these are characters I love and here's why. Guardians of the Galaxy for me was a huge one because I love them in the comic books. I'm a massive, clearly, I have a sleeve tattoo of them. I'm a big Guardians of the Galaxy fan, and I knew that it was a obscure group of people that don't read comics probably don't have any inkling as to at all who they are. And so that was another one of like, okay, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? And that's another one where I was very nervous because I told so many people, you guys, this is going to be so good. It's James Gunn and it's the Guardians. And oh my God, we're going to get Star-Lord and we're going to get Groot and we're going to get Rocket. And people are like, I don't know what that means, but I'll take your word for it. And then I was like, oh no, please be good.
so you were like me, because I remember at that time, I was also, like, the only one in my group of friends that was like, "I know the Guardians of the Galaxy," and no one else had ever heard of them. And brought it up, I wanna get into the sleeve you got. Was that because of the film, or was that already because you love them from the comics? Because if I'm not mistaken, the features are from the movie versions, correct?
Yes. So it was originally going to be comic book themed.
Okay.
I was having it already started to be drawn out, and I really wanted, I'm going to go comic book. But then I went to the set of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and I
Oh,
got to see, I know. It was like the best experience of my entire life. I think I was in awe the entire time. But I got to hold little baby Groot
oh
or
my
toddler Groot, I guess. And I was like, "Oh no, I need him on my arm. I need him as part of this." And then I started to think, well, if I have him, I mean, he's not really in the comics yet. He ended up being. And I'm like, so how can I work him in where it makes sense with these comic book versions? So then I just went full movie. I said, let's just do it. Let's go full movie. And I had actually left this part like empty because I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And after seeing Guardians 2, I said, I gotta do Yandu. I had to add him. But I was very like, is it gonna be Mantis? Is it gonna I didn't know. I had to watch the movie first to decide.
of course, makes sense. And would you say that sleeve is done or any
Yeah,
open
this
sleeve?
one is done. I even added if you could see Ego in the background behind Yandu, which is on purpose because they're both fathers, but he's really the dad. But this one is done. It's complete with James Gunn's signature.
Nice.
And but I'm planning a Disney villains one for this arm, which I'm excited about.
Ooh, cool, cool, cool. Um, I wanna do a sleeve too. I just don't know what yet. But I'm on my way, let's say that.
It's
And
a commitment, but it's
yeah.
fun.
For sure. Going back a little bit, you're in New York right now, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and were you always from New York? Did you move at all growing up?
So I was born in Massachusetts,
Okay.
almost New Hampshire. Like we would
Mm,
cross over to New Hampshire because they had zero taxes, and we would go to the
okay.
mall there to buy stuff because we didn't have to pay for sales tax.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's illegal, so don't tell anybody that. No, so so we would do that.
Don't show this to Kevin Feige.
Right, exactly. So we would so I grew up in Massachusetts and I went to college in Massachusetts. But my parents had gotten divorced when I was younger and my dad moved to Florida. So I would visit him in the summer for like a month at a time. And of course, getting out of college and I hate the cold and I hate the snow, I said, I'm moving to Florida. This is ridiculous. I hate Massachusetts weather. It's awful. I do love Massachusetts, not the weather. So, and now look where I am. So then I moved to Florida. uh my dad owns a tanning salon. He hired me as a manager. I did that and I did radio promotions at the same time, which I absolutely loved, which kind of got me into this sort of industry, I guess, a little bit. And then I
Yeah.
met my husband who's in the Navy. The
Nice.
Navy moves you wherever they tell you to go. So so we ended up in Virginia Beach. And then when he got out of the Navy, we moved back to Florida because at this point, my mom had moved down there because my sister had moved down there. So my whole family was there in Sarasota, Florida. And then my husband got offered the job up here. There's
Wow.
nuclear power plants here. And I told him, if this job allows me to either work from home or not work outside the house, because I'm not driving in snow ever again in my life, uh, then yes, we can move. And his family's up here. And they've been a great support system having the kids. So crazy story. We actually moved by driving from Florida to New York
Wow.
with a 10-day old. My youngest daughter was 10 days old when we moved. So that was an adventure.
For sure, it sounds like one. It's the beginning of Inside Out right there.
Yeah, I
Um,
know.
um, and I want to ask now you have all these moves. Now you're there, and how was it when you met your husband? How was that movie, that geek side of you, and was there that side in him? Did you immediately connect through that, or was of course many other reasons?
So the way we met is horrible. But because I was dating someone and he was the
Oh,
best man at a wedding. And then my husband and I were sat next to each other at that wedding, and because I couldn't be at the head table, and then we hit things off. But so, but I broke up with him first. I was not.
okay, okay. We got
So,
some tea nonetheless.
I
There's tea in
know.
this
I know.
interview.
That's so bad. But I have a tattoo on my foot. It's the Patriots because I grew up in Massachusetts.
Mhm.
And so my husband looked down and kind of made like a joke about tattoos. And meanwhile, I look over and he's got a full sleeve. So I was like, oh, yeah. And then that's kind of how we started talking, was tattoos. But then come to
Okay.
find out, we're both into, he's like, we started talking about Marvel eventually. And actually, I have a tattoo on my back that he has the matching one on his side now. It's
Oh, nice.
Rogue and Gambit. We talked about the
Nice.
X-Men, yes. And I was like, Rogue is like one of my favorite characters because I love her in Gambit. And he's like, get out. Like Gambit is like my favorite X-Men character. So we connected over that. I had fallen off comic books for a couple of years just because I had been so busy. And so he actually sucked me back into the comic book world, which was great because he was still reading them. And so that was nice to get back on. And he's like, no, 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 look, you missed this run. You have to read this. Like, this is very important. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll read it. So, and he's just into like movies and Star Wars. And
Nice.
so,
That's awesome. The fact that he convinced you, like, you have to read this. You missed it. That's when you know he's a keeper.
yes,
Uh,
exactly.
and and I want to know. I'm curious because yesterday we were talking. You were on my other podcast, Geeks of the Round Table. Go check that out if you haven't yet. Plug. Um, and you talked about you hadn't seen the James Bonds yet,
Yeah.
and you still haven't. Was there a movie that he hadn't seen, or a franchise maybe that you were like, oh, you got to watch this?
He had seen everything. So, because he's
Okay.
in the Navy and like they just,
Mhm.
what did they do? They would always go to the movies every time they had time off. There was like nothing I could bring to him that he hadn't seen. I would try, and there was absolutely nothing. Something he did get me into also though was Harry Potter. I hadn't, and
Oh,
we were together when I think 6 and 7 came out. 6 and then 7 part 1, 7 part 2 came out. But
Yeah.
he got me reading the books while he was actually away because they go away for a few months. He's like,
Mhm.
read these, and I didn't put them down. I read them the whole time he was gone. He came home and I was like, when's the next movie? Like, let's go now. He's like, all right, well, you got time. It's not out yet.
That's awesome, and again, this relationship of movies. Your dad got you into movies in the first place. This is my favorite question to ask, honestly. Is there now, since you're in this world and you get these early screeners and whatnot, and we'll get to that as well, but is there now movies that you really are excited to show your dad, and then you're eagerly waiting for his thoughts? And has there been any funny experiences with that?
He is so particular. Like, he will not watch anything anymore now, and it's so weird. I mean, he owns his own business. He's very busy, but if it's
Of
not
course.
like war, like he
Mm,
doesn't care. I've tried the Marvel ones. I did get him into though. This was good because
okay.
I hadn't watched any of them, and I think I went. I think it was when I went to the Guardians 2 premiere, and I was like, Dad, no, you will really like this one because like it's got humor, but it's got this. And he's like, Well, do I have to watch them all? And I'm like, I mean, not really for Guardians 2, but you should. And then he started watching them and he would be like messaging me like, oh, I just finished this part. I just finished that. And I'm like, I know, I told you. So I know
That's
he
so
doesn't
cool.
have Disney Plus. So I don't know if he'll watch WandaVision, but hopefully I can get him to.
Yeah, maybe you can convince him because it's gonna be important sooner or
Yeah.
later. It's gonna
Oh,
it's
it's
gonna
definitely, I
it's
think so.
gonna be important. And now also you have you're a mom and you got daughters. How is it to show? I'm curious because how is it to show them movies, but how do you make like the quote unquote the rules? Like what can they watch and what can't they watch? Because they got a few years difference, right?
Yeah. So they're a year and a half apart. So they're just
Okay,
turned 8 and then 9. And she's gonna be 10 in June.
okay,
So, but I have always been like so lenient that basically the only thing I don't allow is like sexual stuff. Other than that, I'm like, I
okay,
don't care about violence or words because I know they're not going to repeat it. They're good kids. And I think I
of
know
course.
that because it totally depends on the kid.
Hmm.
But one of the things that my friend thinks is absolutely hilarious is we took them to go see Captain Marvel in theaters. So whenever that was, I don't even know time anymore. But
Yeah.
and it was opening weekend because I had been on the set, but I hadn't gotten to see it. So I said, We're
Mm.
going immediately. I need to know because I've seen some scenes being filmed and I want to see what happens. And we went, and whenever they get to the part, I don't know, it's like halfway through, maybe a little longer. It's actually probably a lot longer when there's the fight between, like the screw, it's towards the end, the big fight, right?
Okay,
My,
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
my youngest, who was, I want to say probably 6, yells out in the theater, now that's the action I was waiting for. And I was like, oh, yeah,
That's awesome.
okay. But, it's like, all right, you're out, take
That
after your mama, I guess.
yeah, that's awesome. I yelled out in the first public screening of Avengers Endgame. I had seen it in the morning in the press screening, and then I went back home, and in the evening there was first public screening, and when he says Avengers Assemble, I was like, "Woo!"
So
Hopefully,
oh my gosh. I was at the premiere for Endgame.
Ah,
And let me tell you, I don't know if you've been to like a premiere because I don't know if they have them there.
I've been to one actually, but not as press as a guest.
Okay. So, but is it not? And I always say it's such a different experience to watch the movie with the people who created and starred in the movie. It just, because even during the credits, a name comes up and people scream, or someone comes on the especially Marvel, someone comes on the
Yeah.
screen for the first time, and like when Spider-Man came and everybody cheered, like, and I know they do it in public screenings too, of
Mhm.
course, but when you're there and that assemble part, like I I was a sobbing mess.
Same.
My friend next to me is like, "Are you okay?" Because they had us in. It was so weird the way Endgame it worked. Normally, we're in like a theater. We were in this big, I think it was like the Civic Center out there, and we were in like
Wow.
bleachers, comfortable bleachers with like
Okay.
padding on the chairs, but
Mhm.
bleachers. And the chairs were attached. So I'm like shaking, and my friend's like, "Stop! You're shaking the whole row." And I was like, "I can't." Like the whole second half of the movie, I was a mess. And then it was actually really cool because they had all these curtains up around us and they
Yeah.
dropped them and you're in the after party. And there was
Oh my
music
god.
playing. And actually, this is a fun story. I know we're way off track here, but
No, no worries.
it was really cool because normally at Marvel premieres, they bring the cast out before the movie. Almost always. They introduce them on stage, they're here, and then they take their seats. With Endgame, they didn't do that. And I think it was part of we don't want you to know who's in this movie and who isn't in this
Exactly.
movie. Yeah. But they came at the end, they all came up, and we were in the second row, and they were right there in front of us.
Wow.
And everybody talks, but then Robert Downey Jr. is holding the girl who plays his daughter, which was just amazing anyway. And then I know, but wait, just wait. You want to know what made me cry even harder? He goes, I think everything that needs to be said has been said. We just want to let you know we love you guys 3000. And I was like,
Oh my god.
I was like,
That's so cool. I
oh.
actually, not to get off track because this is your origin story, not mine, but in the press screening for that I went to, of course, for Endgame. Usually press screenings, you know this, I know this, it's all highbrow critics not caring for this. They just have to see this, so they're going to the Endgame screening. We were all up. We were all like, Portugal is a small country. We were like 20 people in a room, 20 critics. That's it, in an IMAX theater. All cheering, all applauding, all crying. Like from the moment Cap picks up Mjolnir, that's it. That's it for me.
No. Oh, it's so good.
It is. Going back to a little bit again, because I want to now build up to when you got to this place, that you go to premieres, that you have this amazing channel that you do. And you mentioned that you went to college in Massachusetts. What was your major?
Marketing.
Marketing, okay.
Yeah, marketing. And then I worked at a radio station as an intern doing, like, when you go to a concert and there's a thing and you're like, spin the wheel. That was
Yeah.
me.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
spin the wheel. But then I ended up being like, sometimes I would have to like take the talent somewhere or go get their food or, because if you have a concert in town and all that stuff. So I kind of did that stuff. But that's where I started sort of down this path.
Okay, and then this idea of YouTube, when did this become I could do that maybe?
Okay, it's so weird. So first of all, when I was home with my kids, because I told my husband I'm not working outside the house, I'm not driving in snow, and he was like, "Okay, fine." So I was home, and probably my daughter was like 6 months old, my youngest, and
Mhm.
so my oldest was like 2. And I was like, I can't, I have to do something. I'm going insane. Like, I need something for me, you know? And I was talking to my cousin, and she's like, I have a review blog, and it's really fun. And there's these websites you can go to, and they'll send you free products. And so I thought, oh, okay, I'll do that. And I mean, I had the dumbest things like vitamin C oil. Let me review this. And I thought it was the coolest thing. Look, I'm getting this thing in the mail. And my husband's like, what do you need that for? It's like, I don't know, but I'm going to write about it. So then eventually I thought, this is stupid. And why am I doing this? I want to write about what I like, because I'd sit there and I'd stare at a blank screen for like an hour and go, I don't know how to write about this anymore because it's not anything I care about. So I started covering, then I started, like, someone had reached out to me about kids' DVDs. And I was like, okay. So that kind of got me into that mindset, like, oh, I can actually review entertainment wise. And eventually I was like Mama Smith's review blog. I don't even remember what it was called. So it was so bad. So then I was like, I'm going to rebrand. And I realized Mamas Geeky just fits me perfectly. I was actually talking with one of my friends brainstorming, and she actually came up with that. And I was like, that's
Okay.
perfect. Because there were some others I had, but they were already taken. I don't remember what they were now. So I completely rebranded and I said, all right, I'm sticking with entertainment. So like video games, board games, movies, comic books, television shows. That's what I want to do. Every now and then I'll do something else if I feel like it fits, but that's not really my focus. And so I was always a website. And then this PR rep I work with, who's also a very good friend, was talking about, I think it was before Infinity War, Marvel shared some mashup of trailer reactions, but it wasn't for Infinity War. It was like from over the years or something along those lines. And he sent it to me and said, I want to see your reaction for Infinity War trailer. And I had no clue what I was doing. I had a YouTube, but I think I started it in 2011, but I didn't focus it on anything. I mean, there's literally a review of diapers on my YouTube, but it still randomly gets hit and gives me money. So I left it, but I don't know what I was doing, I'm like, this is so weird. So I was like, okay, I'll just do it. And so when it came out, and it's awful. Like it doesn't even have the video in it because I didn't know how to do it. It's just
Yeah.
me like, with no sound. I don't even think reacting, but it did so well. And I was like, do people really care about reaction videos? Like, is that really a thing? I kind of just did it for my friend because he asked me to. Um,
Yeah.
and then I just got hooked, and I was like, oh, because then a lot of people were like, well, you have to put the video in. You know how some people are actually helpful in the comments sometimes, not always, but
No,
sometimes.
no, no. It's a
Yeah,
50, it's a
it's
25-75% ratio.
it is. So I was like, oh, well, I'm going to do that for the next one just for fun and see. And then I just got super addicted to that. And then I realized, wait, I can do video reviews too. I guess it never hit me that people would care what I thought, I guess.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
I'm like, I was doing it for me. And then now I'm like, I love it. And I always say, and it sounds awful, but I make money from YouTube, but I don't make my money from YouTube. It's from my
Of course.
website and the ads on my
Mhm.
website. So I could easily just do my reviews there, link them to Rotten Tomatoes and be good. But I'm just addicted to YouTube. I love it. Sometimes it's like a lot, but I love it.
Mhm.
I love it.
No, it's
That was a
awesome,
long
and
answer.
no, and it's a great story. So I'm glad you shared it. I love long answers. Keep the long answers coming. I say, um, and you talked about video. That's one thing that actually hasn't worked for me. I just can't seem to get the hold of of the trailer reaction. But anyway, and what would you say was that first video of yours that boom blew up? What would it be? That first reaction to the Infinity War trailer?
That one did all right, but the
Okay.
biggest one was Endgame because
Okay, of course.
yeah, and listen, it starts off with Tony. You're pretty sure he's dying, and you know nothing. Which is really sad when you think about it now, but I was like a hot mess. I was sobbing. Now, I couldn't handle it, and I cried, and I think it was one of my most watched. Right now there's some on there that, again, I did random stuff back in the day. I think my highest one is literally like these singing pumpkins my husband and I created, but that one was right at the top. That was the
Okay.
first one that like went crazy, and all of a sudden I remember I put the video up because it was like 9 a.m. it dropped like normal, right? 9 a.m. my time. I put the video up and I had to take my kids to school, and I came back and it had like 7,000 views in like 10 minutes, and I was like, oh, this is going to
Wow.
be huge. This is crazy. And I had a bunch more subscribers, and I was like, oh, so I think I only had probably 10,000 at the time. So it wasn't like, then I jumped to like 20. It was crazy. I was like, oh, I just
Mhm.
doubled everything by
Yeah,
crying
for
on
sure.
camera. Awesome.
That's amazing. That's incredible. And you start doing the videos and they kind of blew up, especially this Endgame one. And what was your first I want to ask press screening, but right now we're in this blow up phase. So what was your first premiere that you went to,
So
that you attended?
my first premiere was Inside Out, Disney's Inside Out, or Pixar's technically,
Ooh.
I guess. And it's crazy because I had only switched over to the new. I'm not reviewing every single thing that I can, like random items. I'm actually going to stick to
Mhm,
entertainment. And
mhm.
it's funny because I knew that there's everybody talks. I was in these groups and they're like, there's this person who works for Disney. And if he friend requests you, usually that means you might be getting an invite soon. And he friend
Wow.
requested me. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to get an invite? What could it be? What is it going to be? And I'd only been writing in general, honestly, for a year. So I was not expecting it to come
Okay.
that quick at all. And then I got the invite in my inbox to go to the Inside Out premiere. They flew me out. Disney flew me out for it. It was Inside Out, and then we got to interview Kyle MacLachlan about it. And
Oh,
there
nice.
was a couple other, I don't even remember, like Celebrity Family Feud. We got to go to a screening of, or be in the live audience, because Disney always connects. When they do these events, you're there for 2-3 days,
Hmm.
and they jam pack with as much as they can, of course, to get their money's worth, right? Because they're paying to
Yeah,
fly you out, putting you up in a hotel, giving you food, and so
that's
they
awesome.
shove it as much as they can. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
The first press screening.
Oh, yeah, that was the same. Because where I live,
Oh, it was the same.
unfortunately, yeah, I don't get any press screenings here, way in upstate New York. I get
Yeah.
invites to New York City, and it's a
Mm,
6-hour drive. So I don't normally go. I don't think I've ever gone. Because it's impossible to go.
of course. Mhm.
So yeah, so that was my first like actual press screening. And I didn't know what to think. I was in the front row. I mean, you're on the carpet, and it stinks because I'm like, I wish I could do it again because I saw so many celebrities and I was so afraid to go up to them. And now I'll just walk right up. Hey, can I get a picture? They don't care.
Yeah, I hope I'm with you because sometimes here I see them on the street. I used to see them, not right now because it's after 2020. But I hope one day I get to that. So it was all inside out started.
Yeah,
That's
it
awesome.
was.
That's a great one to start with.
I know. So that movie
And
holds such a special place in my heart.
sometimes it's hard in this realm of YouTube. But you were lucky enough to get someone coming to you. You didn't have to go and ask around. I believe so. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's really great. Correct?
Yeah, it was pretty awesome and super exciting. There's been a few, I mean, as you know, that you have to sign up, like Netflix, right? You got to sign up for their media account and stuff. But I was shocked to have such a big name like Disney, Marvel, Star
Yeah,
Wars, come to me. And I was like, am I that? Like, I just didn't feel like people, like I said, I didn't feel like people cared. I was kind of doing it to kill time. And
mhm,
now look, it's grown into a monster, but a lovely monster.
for sure, and it's awesome. And I want to know, stay in this realm of movies and YouTube. What would you say has been the most rewarding part of doing this as a living? I suppose.
I have got to listen. When I got to go to the Guardians of the Galaxy 2 set, that's just been it was absolutely incredible. I had no idea I was going to be invited. So when I got the invite, and it was East Coast, which I was super excited about because normally I fly out to LA, I had to go to Atlanta, which was way
Yeah,
easy for me. It was like a direct flight. I didn't have to worry. And it was just so, I got on the set and they make you sign your life away.
of
And I was like,
course.
I feel like I made it. Like, this is what, as a fangirl, but this is professionally and personally,
Mhm.
and personally, personally for me, it was just amazing to go on set, to see everyone on set. We literally interviewed them in their getup, like I interviewed
Yeah.
Nebula, I interviewed Drax, I interviewed Star-Lord. It didn't feel like I was interviewing like Chris Pratt or Karen Gillian, I was like,
Yeah.
this is crazy. I'm sitting across the table and there's only 8 of us there. So to feel like, and we're there, and then they come in and go, quick, hurry up. Kurt Russell wants to talk to you guys. I was like, what? This is insane. You know? Like, it was just to be there and to see the storyboards up, which they had covered up so many storyboards that they wouldn't let us see. This was before we knew
Oh, for
that
sure.
Kurt was Ego. We didn't even know Ego was in it, which I was like, man, I wish I
Oh, okay.
knew. So they were still just calling him Peter's father. And we were like,
Yeah.
okay. But just to see all that, I got to literally hold, like I said, the little baby Groot. I got
Yeah.
to hold Rocket, a stuffed Rocket that they use on
Nice.
set. I got to watch James Gunn, who, how I feel. I mean, I love James Gunn. I think he can.
Mhm.
I know this never is always comes out wrong because of everything that happened, but I feel like he can do no wrong. But got to see him do his thing and direct a scene. And the scene we got to watch is it was the best. And I can't believe it took so many tries and so long to do the scene. But it was when Drax goes, my nipples. So that's the only context we
Oh
got.
my
And we're
god.
like, what is happening in this movie?
What is this movie about?
Yeah, because that's what we saw. So we're like, what is
Yeah.
going on? And then James Gunn would yell, no, try it like this. My nipples. And you're just like, what is happening? And we watched that scene being filmed for an hour, but it was amazing.
You must have done one of those walls dedicated to figuring out what was happening in the movie, just from that line alone, from that scene as
Yeah,
context.
right. We were like, what's going on in this movie? Why is he talking about his
And
nipples? I don't understand.
yeah. and and it's funny because you actually brought up something I was never like sure about, because so in set visits you actually see shooting one or maybe two scenes, correct?
Yeah. Yes. So what they usually do is they try to give
Okay.
you cast interviews, but then of course sometimes
Mhm.
they're filming. So they always try to have you watch
Mhm.
something. So like that's the scene we watched for Guardians 2. For Flora and Ulysses, I
Mhm.
can't talk about because it wasn't in the trailer, but there's two
Of
scenes we
course.
saw being filmed there. And then
Okay.
Captain Marvel, we got to watch when they were in. Here's a fun fact: when they were in the, what did they call it? They didn't even. They had like a weird name on set for it. The quad. I don't know because it was a mashup of different ships, basically. But when they're in there,
Okay.
and it's Samuel L. Jackson and Brie Larson, and the cat's like climbing in there and they're flying, right?
Okay.
But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they weren't able to do an interview. This was it was the actual, they stuck it in at the last minute. It was during the Infinity War premiere. We actually went to the set of Captain Marvel like 3 hours before the premiere. So
Wow.
they were like, we don't have time. You guys have to go back and get ready for a red carpet, but we want to take you on set. So
Mhm.
they walked us through all the props and stuff. And then unfortunately, like I said, we couldn't do interviews, but we saw that being shot. And so Samuel L. Jackson comes out and immediately starts talking to us. Brie Larson goes over to the corner and gets like hosed down. And we were like, what is going on? And she's like, oh, sorry guys, it took me a minute to get over here because I'm very allergic to cats. And we're like, you're very allergic to
Oh.
cats and you're filming a scene with a cat crawling all over you. So it was crazy. And then Samuel L. Jackson gave me a hard time because Nick Fury is not on my sleeve. And I was like, I'm
Of
sorry.
course.
I
Of
know. He's
course.
like, where is he? I'm like, I don't know.
I'd I'd probably end up tattooing him just out of fear because I don't
I
want Samuel L.
know.
Jackson being mad at me.
I know. He's scary.
Yeah, I bet. Um, and, so you get to these premieres and you go on these set visits, which just sounds awesome. I gotta say, I'm super jealous. If I had the green Power Ranger helmet, I'd put it on right now. Um, and in this YouTube, we talked about what's the most gratifying thing so far. What would you say is the hardest part of all of this?
The hardest part is for sure comments. And I always tell
Mm.
myself, I'm not going to let a comment get to me. But some of them can gut you. And I'm sure you feel that too.
I
Like,
do.
and it's funny because I tell my friends that they call me words, they do that, whatever. But when they say, you don't know your comic books, I get really mad. And I'm like, yes, I do. Maybe you're reading a different one, or you don't know your comics. And then, so that one really gets me. And sometimes people just like, you're wrong. And I'm like, okay, well, we all have opinions. I'm not wrong. It's an opinion. And I try to go back with the, if we all had the same thoughts, life would be boring, you know?
Yeah.
But sometimes comments, man, they really get me. And then the other thing that has made me almost never answer. Like when I first started, I would befriend people. I mean, I'm always in the comments. That's the other
Mhm.
things. I try to answer comments. So that's why a lot of people say, well, stay away from the comments. Well, I try to engage and get to know my audience.
Of course.
And so some people I would start to talk to, like they'd DM me on Twitter or whatever. But now I don't talk to people almost always, just random people, because some of the stuff they send, and as a woman, like I've opened up things and it's been like a picture I didn't want to see.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? Like that's what you're gonna like that's what you do with your time?
Yeah.
So that really stinks because I liked being able to connect with people. And now I don't even check my DM requests anymore because it's like I who knows what I'm gonna find in there.
Yeah, it's a dangerous place, and I'm with you on the comments. Thankfully, I never gotten pictures, but the comments, it's funny and it's especially annoying because you get 4 or 5 mean comments and they're like, "Yeah, whatever," and you kind of have a funny answer for that. You go on, but you think about it. But one then there's 2, which is again, it's especially frustrating.
Yeah.
And I saw you put up a video. Let's shout that out because it was around the time you and I started talking about Blood of Zeus because it had just come out, and you put up a video. You just wanted to talk to your audience about these situations that you would go through, and that's a,
Yeah.
a really awesome video. Watching it at the time, and I actually wanted to comment, and then I forgot to comment, and then it was too late to comment, and I got, I'll just talk to her because I remember uh, after you invited me on to be on your channel for the Blood of Zeus interview with the creators, which was awesome, by the way. I remember that's so kind. I want to have you on my channel sooner rather than later. Thankfully, it's happened at the point, and it won't be the last time. To a little bit to this, to you getting access to the premieres and now the interviews. What was your first like not necessarily big interview, but it was like the first interview that you got. Hey, we want you to interview this person.
So the first one would have been Kyle MacLachlan with Inside Out, but then after that, well,
Yeah.
we went to D23. After that was Captain America Civil War, and I just remember being like,
Mm,
oh, because at Inside Out, I was talking with the PR people and like, oh, Marvel, so you must read the comics, and they're like, no, we don't read the comics, and I'm like, what? How do you not? Listen, I'm a huge Marvel fan, and not even thinking in my head, well, they're going to connect me with Marvel in the future, which was fantastic, and I'm very glad I
yeah.
spewed out. How do you not read the comics? Listen, we got this, and that's all stuff I want to see in the MCU. So, but Civil War was probably besides Guardians, just because that's my obsession with Guardians, and that's just me, and I'll always be biased to that. Was pretty amazing because we got to interview everybody. Basically, we got to interview Paul Bettany, who was amazing. Chris Evans, which I have never
Oh,
laughed so hard in my life, and he's amazing. He actually popped in during Paul Bettany's interview and completely interrupted him,
nice.
and the two of them together, and it was just so fun. I mean, there's things I cannot talk about that interview. I've been sworn to my life, which is just shows you how amazing it was. There was, I mean, we interviewed everyone: Elizabeth Olsen, Jeremy Renner, um, and then we were supposed. And this is really sad. We were actually supposed to interview Chadwick Boseman, and we were told he was sick, which is,
Oh,
but come to find out, it was cancer related
of course.
after the fact.
Hmm.
So, which is like really sad because everyone was so mad and bummed at the time. You know, we're all like, "Oh, we're supposed to interview Chadwick Boseman and he's not showing up." And
Yeah.
now, and I was like, "Well, I'm sure he has a good reason." And now I'm like, "Oh yeah, he had a good reason," and it's just kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's tough. And I know from people like you, and I've had a few. I can count them on one hand, but I've been lucky enough to interview a few people. Would you say would your personal favorite be that one of Chris Evans and Paul Bettany that you can't talk about a lot of stuff?
That is up there. That is really,
Okay.
really up there. Because, but I gotta go with my, when during Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, after the morning after the premiere, we attended the press junket, and it was Kevin Feige and James Gunn together, and that
Ah,
was just incredible. It was absolutely incredible, and I just was like in awe. And I was even, and I don't normally get like shaky, nervous or anything, but that interview, I was like, as I was right in the front row, they're this close to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, and I had
yeah.
half a sleeve done at that time,
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
Kevin's staring at me like the whole interview. Kevin's looking at me, and I'm like, "What's he doing? This is making me really nervous." Like, and I asked a question. I don't remember what question I asked, but I was like terrified. And as soon as it ended, they would always say, "Oh, if you'd be so kind as to take a group photo." So they said that, and
Mhm.
Kevin said, "We will, but first,
Oh
come
my
here."
god.
And I was like, "Oh my god, oh my gosh, oh my gosh." And he's like, "What do you have there?" And they're looking at it, and it's not even colored in, and it's just like Star Lord, Gamora, and then like the ships and stuff. And that's all that I
Mhm.
had. And then James Gunn goes, or actually, I think it was Kevin said, "Can we take a picture with you?" And James Gunn's like, "Yeah, for my Instagram." And I'm like, uh-huh. Yes, you can take a picture with me. So I got this individual picture of them both pointing at my tattoo, like,
Yeah.
oh, and James Gunn tagged me in it on Instagram. And I was like, that is just
So
it was
it's
just, it was
so
amazing.
it's on James Gunn's Instagram. So
It
maybe
is. You have to go way back, but
yeah, because I know I follow James Gunn. I know I can't remember exactly when I followed him when I got Instagram, but before Guardians of the Galaxy 2 for sure. So maybe I saw you there and I didn't know you at the time. So I was like, oh cool, he took a picture with a fan.
yeah.
But maybe I've seen your face for longer than I
Yeah,
realized, which is funny.
there
I'm
was
gonna
no
go look
purple
for that.
hair, so it might be
Okay.
harder.
Still, I'm sure I'll recognize, especially because of the sleeve. That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's amazing. Um,
it was amazing.
and you talked about this in the beginning, about being a geek, growing up reading comic books, choosing Marvel, DC. What would you say your like growing up, especially as a kid, what would you say were like three of the characters or stories that you connected to the most? I'm guessing one of the answers right now.
Well, I love Star Lord. I don't know why. I always loved Star Lord. Him and Iron Man. I guess I like the guys who are like
Mm,
super cocky and funny, and just because that's exactly what those two are. I feel like they're very similar characters.
mhm,
But I think I loved Iron Man, but Star Lord always like I just loved his stories. And if we're going Catwoman, I have every single
okay,
Catwoman comic. If we went
nice.
DC, yeah, Catwoman was my girl, and that's why I like the Gotham stuff. So I like
Mm,
Batman, Harley, Joker. I'm not a big like Superman or Justice
mhm,
League fan, which I think says a lot, and you can probably tell when I give reviews of the movies. I'm just not. I like dark and gritty, which is so weird to say I
mhm,
like dark and gritty, but then I prefer Marvel because it's never really dark and gritty. Um, and so then if I had to choose, I really uh, who I'm trying to pick between two. This is really hard. I'm gonna go with, and you this might totally surprise you, but Hawkeye. I love
okay,
Hawkeye. I love Clint Barton. I loved his story. I like him a
yeah.
lot. Who did you think I was gonna say?
I was betting when I said characters, I meant like comics, like Guardians of the Galaxy, and there's Iron Man. So when you said Star Lord,
Yeah,
yeah, but Guardians of the
yeah,
Galaxy, if you want, it
yes,
counts. Because of the
yes.
sleeve, I
That
was like, yeah, I'm
yeah,
betting
that
Guardians
you're
of
right.
the Galaxy are up top there.
If it wasn't, I would have
Yeah.
probably problems for putting it on my body. But yes.
True. um, and so about DC, you're into Catwoman. Catwoman's your girl.
Hmm.
Um, what about the world surrounding Gotham? You enjoy it, but not at the same level. Then.
Yeah, I like the dark and gritty aspect of it. I like that it's not all hunky dory, happy, bright. It is
Mm,
dark and gritty, and there is murder, and I mean Gotham is just dirty in general.
yeah.
And I love Catwoman because she's good and bad. You know,
Mhm.
you don't really know. Sometimes she's good, sometimes she's bad. That's why I love Gotham City Sirens. That was one of my favorite runs. I just love the three of them together. I have a poison ivy tattoo. My oldest daughter's named
Oh,
Ivy
nice.
after poison ivy, by
Oh,
the way.
nice.
So when people try to tell me you don't know DC, I'm like, oh, my daughter's name is Ivy after poison ivy. So I do. But I have this is a sidetrack, but so I have a poison ivy tattoo and
Mhm.
then on my leg. And then I was planning on getting the Gotham City Siren. So I wanted Catwoman as well and Harley. And she's pinup style, which is really cool.
Okay.
But then after Suicide Squad, I was like, well, now I'm not putting Harley on my body because people are going to think I like Suicide Squad. So I put that one off because I was like, if I get a Harley one, even if it's classic Harley, people are going to think, oh, you liked Suicide Squad? Because that's how she became so big. And I'll be like, no,
Yeah.
that movie's awful. I didn't like it.
Mhm.
But
Well, what about the Harley Quinn show? Didn't that bring back
oh,
into consideration?
yes, I know. I want to get it done. The next thing I have to do is I have to
Okay.
fix the Rogan Gambit one because it's been
Okay.
like 11 years. So it just needs like the lines are
Mhm.
starting to needs a touch up.
Yeah.
And it's also now with COVID, I can't even get in. So,
Yeah.
and it's hard because my kids are always home and I can't go spend like with this sleeve, I was spending 5, 6 hours at a time in the chair, you know?
Yeah.
So I will do it eventually, but because I want old classic, like, red, white, and black Harley outfit.
Okay.
And
Which is the animated series?
I love the animated series. I
Mhm.
have not finished it. I think what
Mm.
is there? There's 2 seasons, right? I have like half of season 2 left, and then I got into screener world, and I'm sure you know how it is. You're trying to
Yeah.
watch a show for fun, but then you have like 100 screeners, and you're like,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask because you and I are screener, new movie, new movie, new movie. You have to talk about it. You have to review that. That's what to be talking about. Do you watch just for fun to relax? Maybe with just yourself, with your family, with your husband, with your daughters. What do you choose to watch?
well, so because we talked about it on Geeks of the Round Table, but we just
Mhm.
finished up Clone Wars, which I wasn't
Yes.
even planning on doing any videos about, but so many people found out and they're like, do reactions to the last 4 episodes. So I
Mhm.
did record those. But Now we're starting Rebels, which we're partway
Mhm.
through season 2. We didn't get to watch any
Yes.
last night, unfortunately, but I'm planning on getting that done. So stuff like that, because we're watching it as a family. But
Of
we've also
course.
started last, was it the summer? We watched Star Wars because the girls had not seen Star Wars.
Oh,
So
okay.
because I was like, what age do we start? And we started with 1 because I thought that was the best way to get them into it as kids, which
Mhm.
is my youngest developed like a major crush on Anakin, so it worked out. And I have a
Careful.
reaction video up. If you haven't seen it, I know I was like, you have bad taste in guys. Like that's not good. But
You know what he does in the future, right?
yeah, well, I have a reaction video. It's not really a
Okay.
reaction because I should have recorded it during, but I didn't even think about it. But she was freaking out. So I recorded her after and was like, what reveal did we find out in episode 3? And she's just crying. She's like, Anakin is TV and I'm terrified of him. You'll have to check it out. It's the funniest thing. It's like 10 seconds because I did it on Instagram stories and then
Yeah.
I uploaded it.
I'll
But
look
so we
forward
watched
to it.
all Star Wars and now they've seen most Marvel stuff, but
Okay.
only really newer, right? Like they kind of kicked on
Mhm.
it like Guardians.
Okay.
And they never went back and watched the other stuff. I mean, my husband and I would be watching it and they'll come in and watch like a scene or two, but we
Mhm.
just started going through the Marvel movies with them, which has been
Yes.
a ton of fun. So I actually we just watched Thor recently and I was like, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. Like, this is pretty
Yes.
good, the first Thor. Yeah.
Yes.
So when you were talking about it yesterday, it made me think. We were like, oh yeah. And my oldest I'm gonna have a problem with because every time
Oh.
there's like Thor with his shirt off or like Cap with his shirt off, she's like, I like superheroes. I'm like, here we go. It's starting. But the last one we watched was Avengers. So we're about to do Iron Man 3, which I'm not 100% thrilled about. I don't love that
Yeah,
one, but maybe when I
I'm
watch
with
it
you.
back, it won't be as bad.
I will say this for Iron Man 3, not to get off topic, but it's still now it's bottom for me. It's bottom MCU films, but I like them all on different levels.
Right.
Iron Man
That's me
3,
too.
the good things get better. At some point, the bad things do not get worse. I'll say that
Right. That's
for its
I haven't watched
sake.
it in so long, but I will say watching them back because some of them I hadn't seen. Like I hadn't seen Captain America, the first one, since before I
Mm.
watched Endgame. So
Oh,
watching it
wow.
back after Endgame, like that conversation with
Mhm.
Peggy, some things hit you so much harder.
Yeah.
And like in Iron Man, when Natasha comes in, that one
Mm.
was I'm like, oh, this is actually like I didn't expect these feelings watching this back,
Yeah.
you know? Oh, it's
For
good though.
sure. I gotta say again, not to get off topic, but the first Captain America I also find highly underrated, and I think Peggy and Steve are the
Oh,
best
I
ship
know.
in the MCU.
I
Nobody, I don't see anybody respecting that ship, and I needed to get more respect.
They should now, especially after Endgame. Come on.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my daughters are like crying watching it, and I'm like, oh, because they haven't seen they've seen bits and pieces of stuff, but I've held off like all
Yeah.
of Endgame for them because I'm like, you
Okay.
have to. I mean, they'll walk in the room while we're watching it, but
Hmm.
they don't get it, and I'm like, I can't wait for
Yeah.
them to really absorb it after seeing the back stories. You know?
Yeah. They haven't connected yet, which is great. It's
Right.
gonna be a great experience. Now,
I
and
might film.
yeah. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so I'm going to give you like 3 big questions I'd like to finish the show off before we say our goodbyes, and I thank you for your time.
Yeah, of
And that
course.
is okay. So in this realm of YouTube, what are like 3 pieces of advice you would give someone that is starting and wants to follow this route?
Okay. First of all, it's a lot of work. Know that before you go into it. It's a lot of work, but it will pay off. It's not just like I'm going to record and put this up, but stick with it. And another thing I would say is, I know everyone says don't go into the comments, but go into the comments because there are good ones. And I think when you interact with your audience, they appreciate it more.
Mhm.
And the other thing I will say is definitely find a groove and a kind of schedule. It's hard to do with trailer reactions, but like I always have a live on Wednesdays at 1 p.m.
Okay.
my time, and now people know. So if you can keep some sort of schedule, we all know when trailers drop or breaking news happens, it's really hard. Sometimes, a studio is like, this is embargo. And well, if I don't get it up exactly at embargo, no one's going to care about my video. So I have to get it up,
Yeah.
even if that's not a normal time I would post. But find something to keep a schedule of, because then I've noticed then people are always coming back. They know that's when you're going to be there, because
Yeah.
sometimes YouTube notifications don't work. And so they'll know that when they can find you.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing. And for you, I want to know about you. What is like the next goal you got? What's the next glass ceiling you want to break through?
And it's way far away, I think, but I really, really want to hit 100,000 subscribers, because I
Okay.
want that plaque. I want it so bad. And it's so dumb. And I'm at almost 59. So I'm like, I'm over halfway. It's probably not going to happen this year. I told myself my next goal was 75. And then I was like, no, 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 I'm lying to myself. It's 100. I just really want that plaque. That's the
Hmm.
reason.
I say always aim for the top, because the higher you aim, the higher you're gonna reach, even if you don't reach the top.
It's
Um,
true.
by the way, do you have a plaque? Because I'm not sure when the plaque start. Is it at what 100K?
Yes,
Okay,
that's why I
okay,
want
start
it
there.
so bad.
Okay, that's the first one, and you'll get it, I'm sure, and hopefully many
And you
after
get a
that.
check, and you get the verification check when you hit 100,000.
Oh, nice.
I know.
I'm jealous. I'm just hoping for 3,000 myself by the end of
You will get
January.
there. You're gonna end up you'll get a plaque. I know you will.
Thank you. And final question before I do let you go, before we plug whatever you got coming up next, I want to know from you. Give me two names, two people you would like to see on this show. You'd like to see me interview and know more about them, know their origin story.
Okay. Real James. I
Okay.
don't know, you know who that is, right? Yeah, you know who he
Yeah,
is.
we're good friends.
I like him a lot. I like him a lot, a lot.
He's
I
he's
love his
great.
stuff. And Dave Lee Down Under. Those would be
All
my
right,
2.
I'm gonna check that out because I'm not familiar. Can you repeat the name for me?
It's Dave Lee Down
Um,
Under,
All right.
I believe. He's in
All right.
Australia. Down Under.
I'm a fan. I love the accent. All right, that's it then. This has been Origin Story episode 3. Tessa, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining me and for sharing your story with everyone. What do you got coming up on your channel next?
Well, I'm doing my WandaVision watch along parties / live reactions every Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. I have so many interviews. Like next week, I have almost 2 a day that are
Wow.
coming up, none of which I can even really, I don't think, talk about, but they will be coming soon. So stay tuned for that. It's gonna be fun.
All right, thank you so much. And Tessa's links in the description. Go check it out. Subscribe to her if you haven't yet. And again, thank you, Tessa. Thank you to everyone watching. Vote down below if you agree with Tessa. If you don't, if you want to see stuff on this show, make sure to let me know in the comments so I can contact them in time. We can bring you another episode of Origin Story. Till the next one, love each other and love the movie.